A white mother from Virginia says that she plans to sue her biracial son's school for teaching him about racism. Fox News' Jesse Waters recently spoke to the mother, Melissa Riley, during his show on Monday night. Riley told the Fox News host that her son's father is black and that she is white, and now, as a result of education, he's now having issues with race. Take a look.
All right, so Melissa, your son is the father's black, you're white, and he'd never mentioned issues with race before, you're saying? What exactly changed?
Right, we didn't have issues before. He's in 8th grade. They introduced this critical program, and now he's having racial issues that was not there before.
What kind of racial issues is he having?
Well, he's seen himself just as a black man. He's seen things that don't go his way as racism, and he's finding safety in numbers now.
So when you're saying he gets a bad grade at school, he blames racism, or a girl rejects him on a date, racism, are those the kind of things you're seeing?
Yes, I asked him to clean the house, racism, yes.
You're kidding, right? Or are you serious?
No, I'm serious. They have totally changed his perspective. They have put him in a box.
No, they have put him in a box. Yeah, I'll take things that didn't happen for 200, Alex. Yeah, am I calling this lady a liar? Maybe. Maybe. I'm just going to guess that she is not being completely honest about her experiences. I'm just saying. For one, critical race theory, or whatever she was talking about, this critical thing, that's what it is. Yeah. It's not being taught in school. How do I know? Well, according to an earlier lawsuit filed by the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a conservative group, they argued that the school district's anti-racist program is part of critical race theory and contravenes the state's constitution's equal protection and free speech clauses. Oh, really? Okay. The suit, submitted in December, was immediately struck down just last month by a judge who found that there was nothing inherently evil or wrong about what the district was teaching. So, not critical race theory, because again, critical race theory is not taught in class. So, this is more of an anti-racism thing. And a judge said, well, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, this is Albemarle Circuit Judge Claude World II. He said at the time, I think it happens during education that certain people are made to feel uncomfortable about history and their place in it. Oh no! How dare people make you feel uncomfortable? And understand that's what the entire pushback against so-called critical race theory or any type of anti-racism education in school is. It makes certain people, i.e. racists, uncomfortable to learn about this history. Now, the ADF is also backing another lawsuit filed by a former assistant principal that alleges that the school board had harassed her after she expressed concerns about the school's anti-racist teachings. Harassed, that's a very serious charge. I wonder what kind of harassment. Calling her wrong or pointing out that, hey, if you're against anti-racist policies, what does that make you? It might make you racist. But now, going back to her. So, a couple of things stood out here in the ridiculousness of this entire thing. Such as, I can't believe he's identifying as a black man. Okay, and? What's wrong with that? And then, now he's finding safety in numbers. Oh, meaning he's finding black friends. What's wrong with having black friends? I don't see a problem with that. Unless, of course, you think that black people, black kids, and black families might be a bad influence on your son. But why would you automatically believe that? If you didn't have some sort of inherent bias against black people and or their culture. Again, Why would you go to that conclusion unless you already had some preconceived notions? And why is identifying as a black man a bad thing? Unless, again, you think that there might be something wrong with black people. I think there's something going on here a little bit more than just problems with the school. Okay? Now, later on in that segment, Waters asked Riley what her son's father, who is African American, thought of his son's behavior and the school curriculum. She did not have an answer other than saying, "I'm a single mom, so I am teaching him everything." And there it is. Hey, at least in my, perspective here, I'm gonna go on a limb and suggest that this might have nothing to do with critical race theory at all. Again, not being taught in K through 12. I'm gonna speculate that, again, the kid's a teenager now. Teenagers tend to act out a little bit, right? But also, he is discovering his identity as a black man. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But she seems to think that there's something wrong with that. And so maybe you got to look at why. Could be that the father's not in the life anymore. Maybe she's a little angry at the father for not being there, being a single mom. I don't know the situation. But it seems pretty clear that she does not like him identifying as a black man. And that's certainly some racism there. Yes, you can be racist and be married and have a relationship to a black person, or a friendship even. I've seen that before. And by the way, just because you're racist also doesn't mean you won't smash, which is obvious in this case. Now, the other thing here is wanting to jump on these lawsuits because, I guess there's a couple of other reasons, right, that you can look at. For one, she just might think that critical race theory is bad because somebody told her that it was bad. Again, critical race theory, for the third time, not taught in K through 12. It is taught as a graduate level course in colleges, certain colleges. And what it is that it's not a way to make white people feel bad. No, it's a factual explanation of institutional racism. And what it does is challenge people to look at the racial injustice in America as not just isolated incidences of individual bias, which we see. Now, another thing of critical race theory is that it challenges colorblind laws and policies. Now, that is something that I think that they're kind of afraid of looking at. Now, what that means, colorblind laws and policies, it means that basically laws that are written without acknowledging any sort of pre-existing racial imbalance, because then you'd actually have to admit that there is a pre-existing racial imbalance. You'd have to do something about it. So let me give you an example. The GI Bill. I like the GI Bill. I think that was a good idea, right? And I think it helped a lot of people. But most of the people that were helped, if you look through history, were white people. So now, for example, Columbia University political scientist Ira Katz Nelson looked into this, wrote an entire book on it. Affirmative Action when affirmative action was white. That's the title of the book. And he pointed out that while the letter of the law did not favor veterans of one race or the other, in practice, there were things that prevented Black Americans from getting their share of the benefits that they had earned through their military service. So again, we're talking about military service here, okay? And the GI Bill is supposed to be there to allow you, after your service is done, to have these benefits. Now, why did Black people not get their share of benefits then? Well, for one, the bill was administered by the states and not the federal government. Now, that allowed Southern states to kind of herd Black people into underfunded HBCUs where they might not get as much of a quality education because they were literally starved of funding and resources by these state governments. Another example, the job training part of the bill the program's administrators, most of them white, also tended to steer black veterans away from higher paying jobs in carpentry, woodworking, photography, and electrical work, and instead toward training programs towards, or should say, for lower paying service jobs like dry cleaning or tailoring. And one of the bigger examples here, one of the more well-known, is the redlining. The GI Bill would allow veterans to get home loans with low down payments, and they lower interest rates as well. And the thing is that the GI Bill relied on banks to get this done, to actually do the loans. Well, many banks wouldn't loan to black people, and the ones that did practiced redlining, meaning only giving African Americans loans for homes in majority black neighborhoods where you had lower property values. When there's lower property values, again, one of the biggest investments that you could make that actually guarantees generational wealth is investing in a home. Now, if you have a lower valued home because of the neighborhood that it's in, and you were pushed towards that area and pushed into lower income jobs, which again, lower income, don't get as much in your loans for homes, etc. All that stuff really plays into it, each other, right? It's all connected, it's all linked. And so you had this situation where you had these inequalities that were created and exacerbated in a program that was supposed to help everyone equally. Okay? So when you fail, and this is what Katz-Nelson talks about, failing to provide for existing inequalities leaves room down the line for people to enforce the law unevenly. The end result is what Katz-Nelson describes as affirmative action for white people. And that's exactly what's going on. Now, this is not because Congress wrote the legislation intended to disenfranchise people of color. No, again, the program was a good program. And it did help a lot of people, but they didn't take these inequities in mind. So they didn't write things especially to prevent this from happening. So the GI Bill, like many of other policies Katz-Nelson describes in his book, and we're even talking about Medicare, Social Security, things like that, were written as race neutral and stated that everyone was eligible. Now, you wouldn't know that unless you did the research into it. You wouldn't know that unless somebody had brought it to your attention through education, or unless you had actually lived it as well. That's the other thing. That's why critical race theory is important. Again, not about making white people uncomfortable. It's essentially tracking the ways in which this colorblind racism of the post-civil rights era actually helps to entrench racial disparity instead of alleviate it, as well as discrimination and disadvantage among black, brown, and indigenous communities, anybody that's not white. So now, if you don't want that to be taught, if you don't want people to know about these things, and therefore, of course, work to try to change them, well, there's two possibilities. One, you're just completely ignorant about what is, actually there, because you have conservatives that right now conflate critical race theory with anti-racism, or you do know what it is and you don't want any of those problems solved because you might feel threatened by the idea of black people existing on an even playing field. And why would that be? Why would you be scared of black people being able to succeed in a fair system? I'm guessing the people who feel that way might not have a good answer for it.